Heather Wasserman, and welcome to my podcast, a behind-the-scenes look at what it really takes to own our worth and reach our goals. I coach real women on how to get what they want at work and in life, as well as a window into my own process as I too figure this stuff out. And that's what today's episode is all about. It's the first part in a 6-part series where I work with money coach Brittany Tam on what's been holding me back from increasing my prices. Because here's the truth. Even though I run a company called Ladies Get Paid, I've actually struggled to get paid myself. As I'll talk about in this episode, the pandemic decimated my business model and forced me to completely rethink how I was making money, and quite frankly, how I wanted to make money. And boy, a lot has come up. Turns out money isn't just numbers. It's really how we feel about those numbers that can be the catalyst or the obstacle to making more. I've been working on a brand new product for Ladies Get Paid, and as I gear up to launch it, Brittany has been counseling me on how to make sure that my fears and insecurities aren't getting in the way. And because I believe transparency is transformative, I'm recording all of my sessions with her in the hopes that if you too, dear listener, are also struggling with asking for more or simply want to improve your relationship with money, you will learn a lot. In addition, all of the homework and action steps Brittany gives me, I will give to you through the Ladies Get Paid newsletter. So if you are not already a subscriber, make sure to go to ladiesgetpaid.com. Now, let's get started. So Brittany, you're the coach. I got to let go of control. I'm receiving today. So you tell me how our session's going to go.
This is a new relationship for us. Really want to set the foundation for what is an effective relationship going to look like. I used to be a teacher, and in my teaching days, it would be all about what are our essential agreements for working together in the classroom. And similarly, I'd love to get a sense of what you feel like is important for an effective relationship for you. And I'd love to contribute to that once I get a sense of where you're at too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you tell me if what I'm suggesting is within the scope of the work that you provide. I get very excited about plans, but what about the follow through? So this is the accountability piece. So I think whatever homework, if there's homework to be assigned, when we meet again, if I didn't complete it or I struggled with it, really examining what happened and then helping to create a better way to move through it next time so that we're not relying on willpower to get things done. A lot of it is actually practicing what I preach to other people, because this is everything I would say to somebody else who's trying to follow through on a goal. We all need that kind of accountability. So, we'll talk about things. You'll give great counsel. Question is, can I actually get it done?
Yeah, and I love that you brought that up because I think that's where the greatest learning and where I find the greatest joy is. Where is the resistance showing up for you? And what do we do with the resistance? Because there's like a gift in there, right? And I'd love to dig in and uncover the gift
Hmm.
for us.
That's so great, because I always tell people there's such a lesson and a gift in the struggle, but I've never thought about it in terms of resistance. I always think about it as a setback, right? Like an external thing happens that you perceive as negative, but actually you can absolutely turn it into a positive. But I don't think I've ever thought of internal resistance as carrying a gift. So this is a great
Mm.
start.
Yay, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
And I love that that's your first thing. So perfect. We're so in line already. What else do you feel like is really important for you for us to make this effective?
A little bit of background on where I'm at in my struggles, and then we can figure out how to make our relationship most effective. I am completely revamping my business. I built a very successful business pre-pandemic, made millions of dollars. The business model that I was relying on is no longer the business model that I have or want anymore. It was really based on brand sponsorships. It was also, it's a huge community. It's 55,000 people in Slack. They've exchanged over 3 million messages. They don't pay. They don't pay. So our community really doesn't pay us much. And the brands paid us everything. Pandemic happened. Those dollars went away. We also no longer were doing in-person events. We had a 1,000-person conference. Everything moved online. And with that, the business model needed to shift. I wrote a book, got a great book deal that sustained us financially for a while. And then I really burnt out and my bank account burnt out too. So I am in the process now of pivoting internally what I want to do, how I present it to the world. So externally, is Ladies Get Paid the big brand, or is it Claire Wasserman is the brand and Ladies Get Paid falls under Claire? So there's a lot of moving parts, again, internally and externally, and in my bank account, as well as family pressures. I'm the sole breadwinner now. I had 2 kids. I had twins 5 months ago, and my wife is full-time in the business or full-time in the family. And I'm now by myself running this business, and I'm the only one bringing home a paycheck. So there's also dynamics that have shifted. So this is a huge moment of transition. And with that comes a lot of feelings. Intellectually, I know what to do. I know what to do for myself. I know what to do for other people. I'm a coach. I'm very good at strategy, big ideas, thinking outside the box, getting really excited. And then you got to put a price point on it. You got to put money goals on it. And this is going to sound ironic because I'm Miss Ladies Get Paid, right? I'm the one who tells everybody else to get paid. I have a really hard time telling myself to get paid when it's specifically related to asking an individual for money. So again, asking a brand for money, no problem. I can ask all day, every day for all that money. But when it's about asking a person who is in need of coaching, other feelings start coming up for me. Same thing as putting monetary goals. And I know I'm jumping ahead. We're going to get into all of this, but I do think this context is really important both for you to hear and also knowing that we are recording this and I'm being transparent about it to everybody in the community, because I think we can all learn from this. Putting goals, monetary goals, it's complicated because you're taking into account your time, your energy, if you even want to do it, just because it's easy to do it. Like it's not just as simple as a number on a page. Or maybe it is actually. Maybe I'm overcomplicating it, right? Because I see all of the inputs that go into deciding what this number is. And I start to get very tired. I physically feel exhausted. And I oftentimes will just stop working, be able to work about 4 to 5 hours a day, which is fine if I was getting everything I needed to get done. I'm not here to say anyone should be working tons of hours. It's all about the quality of the work versus the quantity of the hours. But I give up, quote, easily. But it's really because I start to feel foggy. And I thought it was just a physical thing, but I really think it's mentally. It's because I'm viewing things in a certain way that it's causing the exhaustion. Or I guess in your words, the resistance. So long-winded answer to, I think, the original question, which was it about efficiency of working together? Or you'll have to remind me exactly now that I've given context how I can connect it to what it is that would be helpful for you to know.
Yeah, I think it's maybe about efficiency, but it's really about effectiveness.
Effectiveness. Okay.
I think that what I hear in all of what you're sharing is there's a weight there.
Mhm.
And an invitation that I would love to put out, and this is a cooperative thing, you can feel free to say no to the invitation. Is there a way to invite like some playfulness or some exploration or curiosity into this process so it doesn't feel so weighty?
I know there's so much, I'm so anxious. There's so much pressure on it, pressure I put on myself, but also the reality of having a family to provide for.
Mm.
Got medical debt that we're dealing with on top of it for my son. Playfulness, damn. Yeah, if we can, I don't know if it's playfulness so much as purpose, like always connecting back to why I do what I do. I found that when I am continually coaching people, it is reminding me about why I love what I do and what I'm great at, which is why I have this podcast where I coach people and I coach them for free. I'm coaching women every single day, whether they're paying me or not. It's something I'm doing. And it was so important for me to do that, I realized, because when I wasn't, I'm like, now it just all feels like a burden, right? Because you forget. If you're not witnessing yourself doing the thing that you love, then it's like, why am I here again? So playfulness, maybe that would be great to get to. I do know for me, the first step to that is connecting to the purpose, but also that's only worked. So I've only gotten so far, right? You don't know what you don't know. So that's been the best I've been able to do in moving through my resistance is that connection to purpose. But getting to a place of playfulness would be awesome if you could teach me how. I'm like the least fun person. I don't know if that's true, but I consider myself a very unfun person. It's hard. I like have had to learn how to have fun, and my wife is much better at that than I am.
Uh, one of the things I hear a lot kind of coming through is that sense of responsibility. Because you've got those responsibilities like at home, but when you talk about connecting to purpose, it feels like a responsibility in that wider world, right? And that's a really heavy weight to carry. And it makes me think about what is within our sphere of influence and where do we channel our energies.
Mm.
But this is probably like a bigger philosophical question for another point in time. If we think about just what do we need from each other, you've already mentioned that whole if you've struggled with something, you want to examine it. And one of the things that makes me think of for me is I want to know if you're struggling with something. Let me know if something is coming up, and it doesn't necessarily have to wait until we next talk live. It could be something like shooting me an email being like, okay, so I spent 2 hours looking at a blank screen or doom scrolling
Mhm.
because I was avoiding this. And how does that feel for you?
Yeah, that's great. I think something I'm trying to work on is being much more aware of how my resistance is coming up and getting into that observation mode, going from the kind of reactor to the watcher, so to speak. Certainly aware of when I'm doom scrolling, but my first response to myself is, Claire, stop doom scrolling. I can't believe you're doing this again, right? This like very combative voice jumps in versus a more sort of curious, compassionate voice, which would be, interesting. Noting this is how I'm coping, that I will go tell Brittany. So it's if I can't be the observer for myself, channeling you as that observer. This is why I'm so
Mm.
passionate about coaching. I just think everyone needs perspective. So,
Everyone needs a mirror.
yes, yes.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. What else can you think of that you would need from me?
Again, I don't know if this falls within your scope, but I do have some specific business questions about when you're deciding how much to price something as. I've done market research. I have a general sense of what my hours are worth and how much effort a thing is going to take. As we were talking before we were recording, I mentioned as I detailed out my new products, I always detail out what is the process of executing those products, because something could be a great idea and priced at a certain point, but if it takes you so much effort, then maybe you either don't want to do it or don't want to do it now or need to price it differently. However, getting a second opinion on, am I calculating, like, is my sort of formula for pricing correct? That would be helpful. And same thing goes for discounting, because I always like to give discounts to people, not to everybody. There's always got to be a discounted offer as well as payment installations. So again, knowing, did I get the math right on this? Am I misremembering that it takes a certain time to do this? And how does all of this fit in? I've never done like all the things that I'm about to offer. I've done them all individually, but I've never offered them all at once. So I do think part of this would be I just have to try and see, but I start to get really nervous. I really doubt if I'm calculating things correctly.
Yeah, we can definitely take a look at that. And I'm not a pricing pro. My take is we try and we iterate.
Mhm.
We try it and we iterate because
Am I
the
thinking of all the things, right? Like I was talking about this to a woman in the community. So by the way, for everyone listening who's like starting a business or has a business, it's so important to have people who are your core demographic giving you feedback on things. And
Mhm.
I have a couple of women like that who we text each other and I'll be like, what do you think about this idea? Whatever. And I was mentioning some of the things I was going to offer. And she was like, why are like 60-minute private session? Like, girl, like for that price, but you need to be doing 30 minutes. Like, I just like completely just wanted to give myself entirely. And so having somebody gut check me on, do you
Mm.
really need to give 60 minutes? With 30 minutes suffice? And by the way, don't change the price point. We don't need to be a pricing point pro, but I do think that gut check is important,
I
especially
feel like,
as a fellow business owner. So,
yeah, and I feel like the question that I would have in that context is like, what are the beliefs? What are the emotions that are driving those pricing urges,
mhm.
right? So I think that is where we have a lot of space to explore too.
Great. Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Going back to our relationship, I don't know if this is taken for granted, but I am a fan of like non-judgment and I am a fan of curiosity. Let's be honest, I'm a overgrown 5-year-old child. So I'm into feeling the feelings and I'm into like just asking why. So I'm hopeful that just, I know that that brings a sense of safety to me, knowing that you'll be loved and appreciated with whatever you come in with. And that's my hope for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess if we know that you value connecting to purpose, you value seeing the bigger impact of what you're doing, and that helps anchor you and helps keep you grounded, that you'll let me know when you're experiencing resistance. And when you're experiencing resistance, we'll both go in with a kind of loving, compassionate curiosity. I feel like that's probably a decent start.
Oh,
How do
amazing.
you feel?
Yeah, that's great. I know. It's just so wild that I can do this so well for other people. And I do it well for myself. I do want to give myself a little bit of credit, but you're saying all the things I would say to somebody else, yet my first reaction to myself is always to be critical rather than compassionate. So, not to say this will be hard, but it's a good challenge to have.
Yeah, and it's just always so much easier to see somebody else's stuff, right? And it's always easier to give. Maybe it's not always easier, but for a lot of us, a lot of women, it is easier to give love outside than to receive love for ourselves. I feel like that definitely plays into this picture.
Something that I've been thinking a lot about is this kind of chicken and the egg I'm having with myself, and I'll just say conditional self love in a sense, until I make this. So I'll just give you the rundown of like how I've been viewing myself in the past couple of years. I have felt like until I can get this money machine going, this new business starting this rebirth, including the birth, until I can get this money machine going, I will not be happy. However, my dissatisfaction, my agitation, that tension is standing in the way of getting the money machine going. So I have to almost proceed as if it doesn't, quote, matter if the money machine's going, although of course it does matter. Again, these very real life pressures of I have to provide for my family, we have these medical bills, etc. How do I live a happy or peaceful, easeful, joyful existence while still trying to build the money machine? I have to separate my self-love from the ability to provide for my family and this business, which may be more
Yeah.
of a therapy conversation in general. I do want to draw that distinction for everyone listening and also between us, like the kind of coaching that you do and the money mindsets, like where does that factor into larger therapeutic work? Because I know everything I'm sharing here are things that I would share also in a therapy session, but you're not a therapist. So I don't know if you want to go in that direction of how you respond or the way you were going to initially respond to what I just said. Feel free, go in whatever direction. But I know that this does definitely veer into more like therapy territory.
Yeah, and I think there can be a little bit of overlap, but with the coaching, it's really about where do you want to go? And I think a lot of my perspective is you know way more than I do about what is going on with you. And all I'm doing here is acting as a mirror
Yeah.
and asking curious questions to like help elicit that. And a lot of I think the way that you and I both work is that we love the strategy, we love the big ideas, and plans, I'm assuming, are a breeze to generate for you.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Love,
yeah,
love a new idea with a new plan.
yes, same. And that whole piece of the resistance is where we need that other person, because we don't necessarily, it's a lot trickier for us to do the, oh, okay, so what does this resistance want us to know? What does it need from us in this situation? Because there's some sort of unspoken need there if there's resistance. And how can we give that resistance what it needs without sacrificing the goals that we want to achieve? And so in a sense, it's like strategizing too. It's just strategizing a little bit differently.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So this touches on something that we've already covered. What I'm curious about is two things. What do we already know about how resistance shows up for you? And what tools do you already have for, like, when you're feeling the feelings, what helps you get grounded and regulated again?
Yeah, I recently learned this phrase. I don't know if you know it, but shiny object syndrome. Have you heard of that? Yeah, I love that.
Yes.
Love a syndrome. Love a good syndrome. Imposter syndrome. Now we got shiny object syndrome. So SOS, I guess. So I get distracted, right? I thought I was convinced I had ADHD, and my psychiatrist even prescribed me medication, but it didn't work. So I don't think I have it. I think I'm just a modern woman with too many tools, too many screens and ideas. I am so good at coming up with ideas, too good at coming up with ideas. So I will be trucking along on something and I get an idea for another thing. And they're all good ideas and I put them in a place. Like I have a folder that my wife has labeled season 2, because that's what she calls it now. If I come up with something, she's a great idea, season 2, right? It's just not for now. But I still sometimes go down the rabbit hole a little bit of when the idea comes up, and then it pulls me away from the thing that I need to stay focused on. So resistance definitely starts there. And then there's a lot of failures to launch. So for all of these ideas that I have, I'll spend a lot of time and effort and energy and sometimes money on developing that idea. I'll get really far and then I just won't pull the trigger on it. And so I spend then a lot of time beating myself up for not launching. However, there are a lot of things I'm really glad that I didn't launch. So I like that you mentioned, I think that you said something about seeing like the purpose of the resistance or what the resistance needs. Like it's there for a reason, right? It's to protect us. So sometimes I'm glad that I haven't launched certain things, but I renege on my ideas, right? So as quickly as I get a good idea, what I think is a good idea, I'll then find ways to counsel myself out of it. So that's another piece of resistance. In terms of tools in my toolkit, I have a lot. It's just a question of, do I use them consistently? So I know that every morning, if I meditate, that's very helpful. And I have a very specific meditation that I do that's internal family systems based, IFS. So it's parts work. Part of one of the products I'm offering folks is going to be meditations specific to obstacles, right? So overwhelm, self-doubt, the imposter syndrome, whatever, procrastination, right? The thing that you're suffering from. How do we dialogue with it? Excellent at doing that, but can I do it consistently? No, that's a struggle. Other things, I'm going to start going to therapy again regularly. I go for a walk every morning, or I try to, for about 30 minutes. I don't work out other than that. Probably would be a good thing for me to do. But I would say that meditation, getting that to be consistent again, journaling, something I was doing every day. I'm doing a little bit less now. I just need to rework these things back into my schedule and hold myself accountable to actually doing them, because I always feel better afterward. Like always. It's just so wild. A thing that we know works for us. Why do we not do it?
We we've got like all these, I think when you talk about shiny object syndrome, it makes me think of all of the options that we have in front of us. And it's easy to lose focus on what are the things that we really value and what are the things that really matter to us when we've got all of these things competing for our attention.
That's true. That's true. I know eating healthy food makes my body feel better, but I have a donut in front of me. So of course I'm going to eat the donut.
And what does the donut give you? It gives you that quick little sugar rush. It gives you that quick little pep. And
Right.
you're like, this is something that I need right now. You're living for like this moment. And also it's easy to forget that this moment has implications in the future too, right?
Right. I also
Um,
think something I've realized, it's a little more a philosophical conversation, but something I've realized is for both me, but also people I coach, we might say that we have a certain value or a certain goal, but if our actions speak otherwise, it's worth taking a moment and then re-examining, are those actually my values and my goals? Or is this aspirational because of a bag of goods I've been told by the world or whatever, right? So I need to work out or whatever. Do I though? I'm happy with my body and I'm healthy. You know what I mean? It's hold on. Do I really actually want and need this? So that is a gut check I also think is worth giving ourselves as we proclaim we would like to have these things. Do we really?
Yeah, and we'll dig into this in probably no, not a half a second, but we'll dig into this in a moment. I do have a question for you. A lot of your resistance stuff, coming up with ideas, going down rabbit holes, like the shiny objects, it's very mind focused. Have you noticed how resistance can show up in your body? Does
That's great. Yeah. Definitely shallower breathing, shoulders up to here. I've had some, I wouldn't call them panic attacks, but towards the end of the day, when I realize time is up, I have a very loud internal timekeeper. That's how much closer have you gotten to your goals? So by the end of the day, it's really fucking loud. And I get extremely anxious in my body to the point of where sometimes I have to take an Ativan and yeah, heart racing. And also sometimes I get stomach aches.
And when you talked about the tools in your toolkit, they were all kind of things that had maybe they come in some sort of container, like a bigger container. Journaling feels like it's not a 1 minute quick grounding fix, or the therapy, it has to happen on a set schedule. Is there stuff that you find that, like, when your shoulders are up, you can do right in the moment that will help ease that a little?
That's great. Yeah, that's be a question of remember. I need a, I don't know if it's called like an anchor trigger or something that reminds me, okay, when that thing happens, do this. I've had in the past, shout out to Keita Williams, successfully great accountability coach. She, when I would meet with her, she would have me wiggle my fingers and my toes at the beginning of sessions. And that was a way of getting from the mind into the body. Remembering to breathe deeply. I think a lot of it comes for me with the breath. Again, when I remember to do it, it's great. So how do
Mhm.
we get me to remember it?
And I feel like maybe that's just a practice, and maybe I don't know. There are a whole bunch of random things that we can try, but part of the process is just trying things and seeing what sticks, because what works for my toolbox is not necessarily going to work in your toolbox, right? And I feel like anybody who tries to sell you, like, I have all the answers for you, is snake oil. Like, it just screams snake oil, right?
And also what tool works for us today might not work for us tomorrow, right? Or
Yeah.
like with meditations, like I super resisted it for a long time until I learned about walking meditations. Like,
Mm.
and now I can sit quietly. And I don't do a quote a good job at it, but that's not the point of meditation. But I got started by doing a practice of meditation that was more in line with my energy. So yeah, huge fan of customizing, experimenting. But yeah, it's just this again, chicken and the egg or something. When I'm in this anxious mode, the best thing to do is to breathe, slow down. But instead, the default is, oh, let's get more anxious. Let's do things faster or eat the sugar, the caffeine, right? Like the very antidote that we are looking for, we never go for. It's always, let me just continue to pour kerosene into this fire, to this dumpster fire. I'm obviously being a little bit dramatic here, but it's,
So I don't know, something to play with for me, like also an anxious queen. Like, sometimes what I need in those moments is I need movement. I need to, like, run up and down the stairs. I need to take a
yeah,
walk around the block, and just getting like that movement out helps settle me.
yeah.
So I don't know if that's something that you would speak to you, that you're like happy to play with. But when you are feeling anxious, can you go jump on the bed? How
Right.
does that
Oh my
feel?
gosh, such a good idea. Okay, first of all, anxious queen, love that. That's maybe the title of this episode now. Yeah, that's great because I always do so well when I go for walks, but those take time, right?
Mhm.
So I like the idea of, love the idea of jumping on the bed.
One
Definitely.
of the things that like the person below me used to ask about is my vacuuming,
Mhm.
because for a period of time when I was anxious, like I vacuumed. Just I have a very hairy dog, and the sucking up fluff is satisfying and it's movement. So whatever that movement, whatever form it takes, maybe some movement might help
And I need to
dissipate.
clean my house, but I hate cleaning. If I could try to combine that vacuuming as like the antidote to the anxiety, then I'm really accomplishing a lot of my goals here.
Yeah, we'll continue to play with what's in your toolkit. And I feel like we're hitting on what we talked about when we first talked about doing this. Like, what goals do you have? And how do they connect with, we talked about values earlier. How do they connect with your values? How do they connect with your vision?
Yeah. So my goal in a very succinct way is to move from a entirely reliant business model on, previously it was sponsorships, but also live launches. So really we're making a lot of our money in the past year of me doing these programs that are live, right? Still going to keep doing them, but I don't want that to be the only way that we're making money. And so creating a product, a process, and a pipeline to support that, launching it basically now, starting to promote it now with a real official launch come September. And so this episode, we're recording it on July 19th. So it really works well in the next 6 weeks for us to work together, that this stuff will be out in the world. And so working through the emotional resistance I have as I'm putting in the work so that the rest of my day, I don't have to be so much in my head and I can really just execute.
One of the things that we talked about too was you mentioned a sense of guilt when it comes to that pricing. And I know this was a few weeks ago. Is that sense of guilt still resonant?
Yes, but I'll tell you, because I feel both sides. So I really believe in the value I provide for people. I think I'm excellent at what I do. And I have pages and pages of a Google Doc of people who've written into me telling me very specifically how something I did, guidance I gave them, whether it was me one on one at an event, workshop, or my book, got them a raise, got them a job, got them to break up with their boyfriend. People's lives have changed, right? So I know that I bring a ton of value. On one hand, I am really proud of charging a chunk of change for it because people will do more work. They will put in the work if they are paying for it, right? I have absolutely seen that happen. If you offer something for free and somebody participates, they're just not going to do the homework. Whereas if they were paying to take the program, they will show up. Okay. And so they'll get better results if they're paying. So I intellectually get that. I also intellectually get that if they pay, it allows me to stay in business and to keep changing lives and also provide free content or subsidized content for people who can't afford it. In a sense, the money I'm taking from a person paying me for coaching is paying it forward also, right? It's not just about me. This is all intellectual, though. This is what I get in my mind. In my emotions, I want to help everybody. First of all, I already see that they're suffering, right? They're coming to me with challenges. And on top of it, I'm making them pay, right? So here they are, either out of work or in a situation where they don't feel good about themselves. I'm like, now you have to spend money on top of it. By the way, it's not like my therapist is doing her work for free with me, right? Like I'm suffering going to her and giving her $300. So I understand that this is how it quote works, but there's something about seeing a person who is experiencing challenges and then requiring them to spend money on top of it makes me feel a little weird. I also think I've really struggled with reconciling myself with my profession, actually. And this speaks to a word that you used, which I have absolutely used before, which is snake oil. There are a lot of motivational speakers and coaches out there that I think are giving bad advice. It fraudulent, or it's making people feel that sugar rush in the moment. And then there's a come down because they don't have an action plan after, or it's aspirational, but not accessible and achievable. And so then it makes the gap for people between where they currently are and where they want to go grow even greater. And it's very detrimental. I've really resisted going into my profession because of that. Then I had an aha moment, which was, wait a minute, if I don't like how things are currently being done by a lot of people, and I feel like I can do it better and I can be the solution. And I'm sure there's other people out there who feel the same as me. In fact, I know that there are. You said the word snake oil. I have to do this. So instead of being a reason to stay out of the game, it actually is a reason to be in the game. Again, a little bit intellectual. Like, I figured these things out, but I don't necessarily believe myself. So I only recently, I'll be very honest about this, even though I've been doing what I've been doing for about 7 years in different forms, though. I didn't start as a coach. I was actually hiring other coaches to teach classes, and I was building the community and hosting events. And then eventually I started to get hired actually by companies to come in and teach. And then we can go into more detail in maybe now or later episode or whatever. But I've been, over the past 7 years, building up my offerings and how I coach people. But it was only actually in the last 4 months, because of my son's health condition, that I really believe that I earned the right to give guidance to others. Because I'm part coach, but I'm strategist here for people, where, yes, I ask good questions that allow the recipient to come up with the answers, which is the proper way to do coaching usually. But I also very much interject, and I'm like, all right, based off of the 3 million messages I've seen exchanged in Slack and the thousands of people that I've taught over the years as I've gone across the country and led trainings at companies, I have a pretty good sense of what you need to do next in order to get to where you want to go. So I'm also giving advice, right? Man, I don't know if I've had imposter syndrome, but I have really not felt always confident about it. I felt it was so ego driven. Who am I to give advice, right? And I really had this experience with my son and what we went through with him, and his heart condition and the open heart surgery at 10 months old and the $3 million bill. And I felt like my life perspective transformed. I felt like I reached a level of living that was at an extremely high level of consciousness. But it took that dramatic ass situation to make me finally believe in myself. Whereas I've had so many experiences over the years that absolutely earned me a place in leadership development and coaching, but I've denied it. And so this is all very recent that I finally believed that I was worthy of accepting people's money for this thing specifically. Again, brand sponsorship deal, whatever, right? So I don't want to say it's about all things. So it's a little bit confusing, I think. And I hope this resonates for people watching, in that in some areas of my life, I feel extremely confident. And some areas I'll feel confident for a couple of hours. And then all of a sudden I don't know, there's still also doubt. And I used to think it was either or. You were either confident or you were not confident. And I'm finding that it's wily, like it's tricky. It depends on hormones. It depends on an email that I received, right? Like, it depends on if I heard myself in a coaching session and I really loved what I was saying to that person. That's what goes back to, I think, what I originally started with, of getting away from this conditional chicken and egg. Once I prove myself, once I've lived enough or gone through enough, I can therefore give advice to people and charge for it. I want to stop putting those conditions on myself, because the goalposts are always going to keep moving. And I'm about to be 38. Enough is enough. I'm really think for anybody who, and it has nothing to do with my age, it's to do with the fact that I'm on the precipice of getting towards the next decade, right? So I think anyone who's in that sort of transition mode of their age, you feel me on this. And I'm like ripping off the Band-Aid of, I've earned it. So I can charge it, I can receive it, and I can feel really proud of it. So I'm like almost there, because again, intellectually, I get it. I see it. But do I believe it?
Yeah. And listening to you, what I hear is that conflict between the cognitive and like the emotional, the somatic pieces. And it's, I'm thinking of this in the context too of we have 6 weeks together, and for us to be like, yeah, you know what, we're gonna come to like total resolution between that cognitive piece and the emotional piece. Maybe I feel like that's a lifelong journey, maybe
Mhm.
not a realistic promise for 6 weeks, but maybe what we do in 6 weeks is we have a chance to start examining some of the emotions that come up. Like you mentioned that you're familiar with internal family systems, and we can maybe not have internal family systems conversations, but like that sort of conversational piece where, say, if like anger is showing up, what does the anger want us to know? What is, and chances are it's going to have something to tell us, and we can follow those threads to start to reconcile some pieces. But I feel like, yeah, if we can just start the process of what would it feel like to start to get these two pieces to step closer to each other
Mhm.
and to be in communication with each other,
Yeah.
and like how we rate that as a SMART goal, I have no idea. But I feel like this is the idea, and we can wordsmith and refine.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. And I'm restarting my IFS work. For everybody listening, I highly recommend you check out No Bad Parts by Dr. Richard Schwartz. Great book, although we all need professionals to guide us through this. So don't just read.
Mhm.
But in IFS, yeah, I want to start working on that, the timekeeper part of myself, the one who's, oh my gosh, Claire, you didn't launch that website yet. Doesn't matter how much work I did on it today, the fact that it's not launched. So it's like always moving the goalpost and pressuring me on the time. That part is very much in conflict with this other part of me that's like loving the big ideas, really proud, excited about helping people, enjoying my work. And they're like not on the same page right now. One is cracking the whip and one is a little delusional, a little grandiose. Both are necessary. That's the thing. Like they both, all these parts of us are helpful at their core, and they're even more helpful when they work in concert and collaboration with each other. It's this issue where when I feel like I'm being pulled, like it's either this way or that way, right? It's confident or not confident, or you're disciplined or you're lazy. It's no, we actually are many things all at once. How do we just let everything like just not be so loud so we can see the forest for the trees, so to speak? Again, this is where a coach is so helpful, right? Getting that perspective. Just a quick tangent for a second. I recently started reading The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. I have thoughts on it. Don't love everything about it, but there is something I did like that he mentioned that I read last night, which was something like the reason we have a hard time seeing things for ourselves or like giving ourselves perspective is because our baggage clouds our vision. We're too in the parts of us that are the critical parts, like the damaged parts, effectively. Those are the louder voices. So then there's literally no way to see anything else other than those parts. So right now I'm living in the anxiety and critical parts. If we can get those to soften a little bit, I think pricing myself, it might not be so hard. The decisions may unfold with a lot more ease, I think.
I feel like probably not today, but maybe like next time we get in touch. You've mentioned the timekeeper a few times, and I'm wondering if that's because that's one of the like parts of you that we need to have a conversation with it, because it sounds like it's loud and present.
Yes. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's, I could be doing all this work, but if I didn't finish it or if it's not making money, it's like it didn't matter. I
Mhm.
discount my work. And it's also just so loud all the time. So I can never have any peace. And then I get tired from it. And so then I stop working. Again, it's that like fucking chicken and the egg thing.
And also, like, how unfun is your life if you're constantly being policed by yourself? And
Totally.
what, and I don't know, this might get to the values. And I'm just looking at your goals where you've got one goal that is very like tangible about your business, that business model piece. And I feel like I can see how it relates to a vision that you have. And the other thing, that conflict that's present when it comes to pricing it, when it comes to thinking about what you're charging and why you're charging it, I feel like connects to some sort of values that we haven't necessarily given words to. And I'm wondering if you have those connecting pieces for us so that we know how it's all connected, like we're talking about earlier. What is the purpose of all of this?
Mhm.
And we have something to anchor to.
You mean things like I want to buy a house in 5 years that costs $1.75 million sort of thing, or more the lifestyle I want to live? Like, how specific do you want to get?
I always like to think that your vision, I think in the capitalist society that we have grown up in, like we really emphasize the thing, right? The form of whatever it is. So whether it's that like $1.5 million home or what, that's what we focus on in society. However, I like to focus on values first. What are the values that I want to live?
Mhm.
Because to me, your vision can change over time. And as long as it's aligned with those values, it's still going to feel satisfying. It's still going to feel fulfilling. We have a way for our life right now to feel fulfilling, even if we haven't necessarily like gotten to all of these things, these forms that we say we want to get to. And I feel like life is way too short to only be satisfied in that fleeting moment of time. So what are your values and what are the things that you see as bringing form to those values?
Yeah. Before I answer that, I want to just acknowledge that I am very much living my values. Like all the things that I want, which is lifestyle freedom, where I make my own hours. I don't have to go into an office. I get to spend time with my family. I'm doing all those things because we have very low expenses. So right now, technically, this is all great. The future vision and those values, it's moving, right? Right now, our kids don't need to go to school. So we're okay in our neighborhood. And we have a really great deal in our apartment. So this fits our budget. But when they have to go to kindergarten, I think we're going to need to move. We'd like to ideally send them to public school. So we got to move. We have to buy a house. So it's future expenses that are looming, which thank God I'm not freaking out because I need to spend the money tomorrow. Okay, we're good for now. And I'm living my values, which is awesome. But I do need to make more money. So we're going to have more expenses in the future. Because my values there would be my kids should never want for anything. So if let's say we do need to send them to private school, that's not ideally what we want to do. But if we were to need to, then I want to be able to pay for that. If we want to send them to camp, if we want to get them violin lessons like I had growing up, right? I never want to say no to them for something that's enriching. And that's going to cost money. That's my primary, obviously, things like, oh, the ability to take a vacation, to buy clothes, right? Those feel a lot less important, a lot less important. I do like self-care. I'll be honest about that. If I could get a massage every week, if I could have a house cleaner, like there's certain like ease of life things that I would like to purchase that are in line with put the oxygen mask on myself first before I can help anyone else. So I do have that for sure. But I would say my number one value is making sure that my kids never want for anything. And there's
Yeah.
two of them at the same time.
And when you say that, my kids should never want for anything, what I see is a vision. And I am wondering what is the desire that's driving that? Is it a desire to,
I'll tell you something that I'm embarrassed about now. Like I'm a bit ashamed of it, which is why I think it's really a good thing for me to share. My initial reaction was to when I thought to myself, if I didn't provide for them, what would that mean? And my initial reaction was losing their respect. Because actually it's about I wouldn't respect myself, right? It's not even about them. It's always about how what we believe about ourselves. And I would think to myself, if I couldn't provide for them, I wouldn't respect myself. And I thought, okay, what does that mean? Why would I not respect myself? And it would be because clearly I let my fears and my resistance get the best of me because I know I'm great at what I do. And I know there's a business model that works. There are tons of people out there making multi-millions of dollars doing the work that I want to do or in the same space as me. So literally the only reason that it would fail is because my fears won. And I thought I would be bereft, right? So it's weird, or maybe it's not weird, but it's interesting that it's actually even not about my kids and providing for them. It's about, did I live my life? Did I live or did my fears live?
And I love that. And what I am wondering if one of these words resonates, courageousness,
Mm.
bravery, does one of those resonate as something that you value then?
Yeah, I'm the worst slash best person to work with because like I'll fucking over intellectualize it. But I have been courageous in so many ways in my life already. I left my husband for a woman and I never even kissed a woman before, but I was in love with Ashley and then I married her. We've been together for 7 years now. That's courageous. I started a business. That's courageous. I had a failed business and then I decided to move on from that failed business. That was courageous. I got sued by a group of men's rights activists and then had a crowdfunding campaign and got a book deal and said to them, fuck you. That was courageous, right? There are so many things I've done that are courageous. So I've thought that I was. I like believed my own hype a little bit. And then I lost a lot of confidence during the pandemic when our business went up in flames. And it's interesting, I had total like existential burnout. And my wife pointed out to me, she said, I think that you might be burnt out from risk, or you might be burnt out from your bravery. And it was interesting. So I backtracked, but then I went through what I went through with my son and came out feeling stronger for it and more in touch with myself and the world and my purpose and closer with my family. Like so many beautiful things, blessings, lessons, gifts came from a difficult experience, got me through that. But yet I'm still very afraid. So
Mhm.
this is where that goes back to this contradiction of, and I'm sure there's people out there feeling this. I'm confused at myself. Which one am I? Of course, I'm both of these things. I'm brave and I'm afraid. And I do think, though, that some things are easier for me to be brave on than others. And I think the one that's hard for me to be brave on is the reason that we're talking. I've had a hard time being brave when it comes to commanding money in this way. So I might be brave in like doing this podcast or telling my story, or people write me all the time. I can't believe you're sharing these things. That's so brave. And I'm thinking to myself, that doesn't feel brave to me. This feels natural. But then I'm scared shitless to increase my prices.
If we were going to think of things that we want to cultivate, is bravery, and maybe there's like a word that goes in front of bravery to qualify it a little bit, but is that something that would resonate as something that you want to cultivate?
Yeah, for sure. And I think reminding myself that I am incredibly brave in other ways
Mm-hmm.
and not have that be an example of a contradiction. Claire, you've been brave. What the fuck? No, it's clear you are brave. Like it just because it was in one area and not in another,
Mm-hmm.
you're not bifurcated. You are one self. They are transferable. Pricing
Yeah.
does not need to be relegated to this. Like we've put, and I'm going to say we because I totally hear this from people in my community. We put money making on a fucking pedestal, like what we charge. It go woo, like it's in this little lock box over here, and it really doesn't have to be. So I think reminding myself that the bravery already exists,
Mm-hmm.
it hasn't been exemplified in this particular way. I'll keep thinking of other words, but that does sound like we're going in the right direction.
Yeah. And one of the things that I'd love to do from this too is what you said. What is the evidence that I have that this is true? What is the evidence that I have that I am brave? Like one of the things that you talked about, lifestyle freedom, was lifestyle freedom. And a question that I have is lifestyle freedom so that
Mm.
what,
Mm-hmm.
right? What is it that gives you or enables you to do?
I, oh gosh, this is going to sound like a contradiction. I was going to say, I don't like having a boss in that the pressure to perform for a certain person and the judgment that can come from that. I really don't like that. At the same time, I also really enjoy, I thrive when I have to perform for the public, right? If I have a group of people who are expecting me to show up every Monday and teach, right? I love that pressure. But
I
that's
was
not,
gonna say, yeah,
yeah, like it's so
exactly.
interesting. So I ran a program called Ladies Get Hired. It was a 3-month job seeker cohort. And it started 2 weeks after I gave birth. And it was in the midst of this total medical hell that we've continued to be in, but was really acute during that time. And these women were like, how are you able to do this? Like, you showing up was weekly sessions. I was my full present self. And I said to them, thank God you're here. I'm not able to do this. The reason I'm thriving, I'm actually thriving. Like, you're giving me a reason to show up and to not live in the hell of my son's medical condition. I get to still maintain a sense of self outside of that. And
Mhm.
having public accountability was fantastic. I don't like having a boss per se, but at the same time, I like having many mini bosses in the form of a community.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what would be a word to, because it doesn't necessarily feel like accountability because it's not about accountability. It's about how you're,
If there are real people who I know that are waiting for me and because they're going to get value, they're going to learn. If they're part of the reason I got quite depressed during the pandemic was I realized I'm hosting these monthly, or actually it was weekly Zooms. People aren't showing themselves on their camera. And so I'm just speaking to a black box. I'm only
Mhm.
hearing myself. Now, that helped me hone my coaching, right? Like, yeah, it was actually quite helpful to hear myself.
Yeah.
But then it was, who am I doing this for again? You're literally, it's hello, it's like an empty room. I don't feel the energy back also. And so that began to demotivate me,
So
which is also,
then
yeah. So also,
would,
I was just going to say, that's why one of the products that I'm coming out with is an ongoing accountability. I don't know if I want to call it an accountability program per se, but something that's a curated cohort of women who check in with each other weekly on their goals. And then I do a quarterly private session with them on action plan, and then monthly master classes based off of obstacles that they've all said they're experiencing. And so part of that, it's not just, oh, this is what I think these women need and are willing to pay for. It's what do I need in my life in order to keep going? And that's
Mhm.
having real people who are showing themselves on their camera, who are in the process just as much as I am.
Would connection or community be words that would reflect your values?
Yeah,
That's
I
kind of
would
what
say
I'm hearing.
connection. I would say connection because I used to think it was community, and now I just think of 55,000 people exchanging 3 million messages, and that overwhelms me because I can't manage that. I'm the only one doing Ladies Get Paid. So definitely connection.
Mm. And that kind of tracks for what you were talking about. I don't know, maybe it only tracks in my head, but in the relationship that you were talking about wanting to have with your kids too,
Mhm. Mhm.
that sense of connection. I'm super cognizant of time,
Mhm.
and I feel like we could go on this forever. And I'm wondering if maybe this piece needs like a little time to breathe too. And for us to hone in on what are the values that you want to be channeling, tapping into here.
Mhm.
I think there's still something, and I don't know what, when it talks to, when you're talking to the reason why you do what you do, there's something about service, but service for what
Mhm.
is the service that,
Yeah, it's interesting. I have a therapist that I see. She specializes in EMDR work. So I don't see her all the time. It's just if there's like a specific incident I experienced that I would like to work on. And I was talking to her about the pressure that I put on myself to perform, etc. And I think I came up with the word, but she got me to basically admit that I want to leave a legacy. This is all about mortality. I think not just me, this is all of us. We want to leave this world, or I'll speak for myself. Like, I want to leave this world a better place. And the way I'm defining that is maximizing my gifts. So I have innate talents, or as Gay Hendricks says, zone of genius. Like, I've identified what my zone of genius is, which is the ability to communicate. And then in particular subjects, communication around career. So guidance for people that I'm particularly good at. For me, not to do that to the best of my ability means I am letting the universe down. Just talk about a burden. Jesus. Like, it's not just about helping others. I'm helping the universe. It's very intense, right? So you can either say, oh, that calls you to a great purpose, or that's actually an enormous burden. Depends how you look at it. But I'm like, I am doing legacy work here, which means every time I take a break, I am letting the universe down. That is the kind of pressure I'm operating under. It's this boulder that I feel, which again, you mentioned lifelong challenge. I'm going to work on it. True. But I also feel like I'm close to being able to move it. Like because I can see it, I can feel it. I can get into the objectivity, especially in conversations like these. I think it's really more about in the moment when I'm experiencing it, how do I maintain, and I'll use the word connection with myself that is not a dialogue with the universe. That's way too big. It's just me, this moment, and my body. Like, how do we make this as granular as possible, going from this huge universe to just this tiny moment with myself? That's what.
Yeah, I feel like we could go on forever.
5 more sessions, 5 more. We got 5 more. So this is 1 out of 5. So everybody listening and watching, tune in, stay tuned, because I'd like to know what happens.
There was like this moment in time for me. I'm also a fan of walking meditation. And so sometimes when I'm walking, I just like have thoughts that just drop in and I'm like, oh, that's funny. And one of the thoughts that I feel like connects to what you're saying is like that sense of responsibility that we take for other people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just our own sense of responsibility, right? We want all of these outcomes for other people.
Yeah.
And it was like I got a lecture in my head from whatever, being like, if you solve other people's problems for them, then they don't get to experience the gifts that are in those challenges, right? All we do here is just we facilitate, but people have to go through their experiences,
Right.
which feels really hard when you're sensitive and you feel it when other people are suffering,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. I can't even walk down the street and see a person, like a person on the street asking for money. Like, I'm like sobbing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's people out
Yeah.
there who feel the same way as me. It's also part of the reason why I got into what I do, is because I feel like I am like a half a step ahead. I'm many steps ahead of some people, but at least I have the awareness and some tools. So I'm like
Yeah.
learning on my own shit. And I'm like, all right, here's what I'm learning. Let me pass it back or pay it forward.
Yes.
But I'm no expert in this, but I also am extremely confident. Again, these dualities, these things that seemingly contradict, right? Expert and novice, like it's forever fascinating. And I know we can keep talking and we're at
Yeah.
time. Thank you, Brittany. You are the best. Homework. Do I have next steps?
Yeah, you know what? I would love to flesh out what other values that you have.
Okay.
If we're talking about wanting lifestyle freedom, so that what?
Mhm.
If we're talking about, to me, legacy
Mhm.
feels like a vision thing.
Yeah.
I see myself leaving a legacy, which includes maximizing my gifts.
Yeah.
What does that reflect in my values? Does it help if I know that Brene Brown has a PDF download of a list of values? Does that help as a jumping off point?
Yeah, I have the whole list. So I give, as part of the Ladies Get Hired cohort, we do
Okay, perfect.
values work as well. So I have a whole list as well. Should I come up with, I think it's 5, 3 to 5, usually people
Three to
say.
five works.
Okay.
Yeah. And I feel like that might give us a start to, okay, also, what is the evidence that we are living this right now? What can we do to cultivate more of it? Because I think that there is potential for like more lightness that comes when you're like, oh, wait, but I'm already doing a lot of these things that are really important to me. And your body calms down when you're like, actually, I am living in alignment with this stuff.
Yeah. By the way, for anybody watching and listening, we're going to be putting all of the homework. So any kind of next steps that Brittany's giving based off of these sessions, they all are in the Ladies Get Paid newsletter. So when an episode comes out, and there's going to be 6 of these in the series, it will include the list of next steps. So if you are not a subscriber to the Ladies Get Paid newsletter, I highly encourage you to do that. ladiesgetpaid.com, or you can just go to clairewasserman.com. Funny to be doing a session where we're one-on-one with each other, but I'm also recording it but this is what I want to do, right? Same thing of when I coach other women, like we're in it together, but we also are doing it with a purpose for service for others. And I love the ability to serve myself and others at the same time, to not feel like it's either or. I think that's a really important message for women to get. They do not need to be mutually exclusive when you give to yourself and to others.
And for me, like one of my core values, like fun.
I know you said play, and I was like, yikes.
And this feels like play. This feels like fun, right? It's trying something different, trying something new. Okay, so homework. Values. Like, how do you feel about you and I knocking back and forth on the goals and trying to get them into a refined, like one-liner that feels resonant and feels like we can anchor to it? And then, yeah, I feel like the only other thing is noticing that resistance. How does resistance show up for you? And what is supportive?
Yeah. Love it. Awesome. I'm
Sweet.
gonna go take a nap now. That's what sounds fun to me.
Naps are great.
Brittany, you're the best. Thank you so much.
Super grateful.